So the other thing I'm thinking about is mobility, right? You don't want this to just be cut off at this sort of the holy grail of one phone number, find me wherever I am. So how does mobile support factor in the solution, and how does this technology handle mobile phones?
Right. So mobility, if you go back 10 years ago, mobility used to mean you're out someplace else, out at your car. So these days, mobility is, you're 20 feet away from your desk and you have your cell phone on you. So mobility now is any place other than your desk phone. So in my case, I might be in our warehouse and I'll switch my phone over to my cell phone so that I don't miss any phone calls. So in a school environment, in a campus environment, it can be set up so that if you step away from your desk, even in the same building but two doors down, you can reassign your extension so that you won't miss any phone calls. And in fact, schools typically have very good Wi-Fi networks. So with Wi-Fi technology, you can actually set up your smartphone to be your actual extension, where you can originate calls to other phones within the school, and you can receive calls. And when you receive a call on your cell phone, it's actually your extension, not your cell phone. So even though you're talking on your cell phone or your smartphone, you can transfer calls to somebody else. So most of the time you would never hear dial tone on a cell phone, right? But in the case of ShoreTel, for example, you can receive a call, and if you have to transfer it to somebody else, you can, using the pound and the star buttons, get dial tone on your cell phone so that you can transfer the call to somebody else or conference somebody in and do the things that you can typically do with your with your extension. So you might have teachers who work in multiple buildings.
Yeah.
You might have the custodial staff who's typically on the go. They're doing what they need to do, but they still need to be in touch. So schools are a very good environment for mobility needs.
You actually mentioned ShoreTel. We hadn't specifically talked about it. That's the one that you typically represent?
Correct, yes.
All right. Yeah. Well, so speaking of justification and who you represent, the money question. We always have to have the money question. You mentioned an example where it was pretty easy for a school to justify the investment. But what advice or recommendations would you give to a school district that's thinking, oh gosh, we really should do this, but we have to find the money? How do they make the case? Where can they go and look for the evidence within their own budget and say, yeah, if we do this, this, and this, we can justify this investment?
So my experience is a lot of schools, primarily K through 12 kind of schools, number one, have many more phone lines than they need. And number two, very often they use Centrex technology. So Centrex 20 years ago was one of the only ways to have 3 different schools in different parts of the town talk to each other relatively easily.
Right.
That's a fairly expensive solution today. So a typical scenario might be a school has 30 Centrex numbers and they really only need 10. So you can consolidate all of your phone calls in and out of a single location, which you can cut down, let's say 30 Centrex numbers down to 10, and you don't need the Centrex capability anymore. So by eliminating a certain number of lines and eliminating a certain type of lines, in this case Centrex, a lot of times we find that the savings can actually pay for, on a monthly basis, can pay for a new phone system. Another case is if you have a college campus, for example, and you have 20 buildings. Each one of those buildings might have phone lines feeding it, depending how the school's architecture is set up. And in 20 buildings, even if you had 2 or 3 or 4 phone lines per building, 4 phone lines per building is 80 phone lines. Well, 80 phone lines might be more than the school needs on a consolidated basis. So again, by consolidating those phone lines into one location and then distributing them out using the voice over IP technology, you get better economies of scale and you can save a significant amount of money that way.
That it might even be a revenue generating.
It could be. But the other piece too is a little bit more on the soft side. You might not need the staff because we're not maintaining a separate telephony infrastructure in addition to our data infrastructure. You already have the data infrastructure. Somebody's already maintaining that. So we're just going to put another application on that. So that's a form of savings as well. And then again, if you're not paying a PBX vendor to do the management and changes, that's another source of savings. So you add those things up, and typically we have very good success helping schools find the revenue to cost justify.
I want to go back to one other thing that you just mentioned. You talked about being able to switch from, a handset over to a mobile. How easy is it for people to learn how to use this sort of thing? I mean, how hard is the technology? We talked already about the management of it, but what about me, the average person, who's got to figure out how to make this phone work? I mean, you always hear jokes about when someone joins a company, they have to learn how to use their phone.
Right.
How do you make it easy? Is this easy?
The mobility side or
and the whole equation, if you will. I mean.
So again, I could speak primarily about ShoreTel. ShoreTel is very intuitive. It's very easy to use. And there's some things that kind of make it idiot-proof. Not that you're an idiot, but for example, if you have a smartphone and you have GPS, ShoreTel has a feature that you can program in your quote-unquote home coordinates. So let's say your home coordinates, let's say you're a professor at a college and your home coordinates is your office. So if you walk out of your office and the GPS says he's now 100 feet, let's say, away from his office, the GPS says, aha. The application, rather, uses the GPS to say, aha, let's switch him over to out-of-office mode, which now makes his cell phone his extension. So you can make it as idiot-proof as you need. And, to answer your question, it's very easy, and we'd be happy to show people. And maybe on another session, we can actually do some of these hands-on examples.
I think it's not idiotness. I think it's more forgetfulness that people, have to learn and all these things. But thanks for joining us today.
Sure,
actually,
thanks for having me.
Thanks for letting me join you here in Hackensack and talk about this topic. And thanks for watching another episode of Best in UC TV. Until we meet again, I'm Heather Clancy.